It used to be that there were GOP members who championed progress in civil rights and rule of law. But these days, just about every Republican politician seems obsessed with two things: owning the libs and getting Donald Trump's approval. That's their agenda. They're not interested in actually solving problems. They're interested in making you angry and finding somebody to blame. Because they're hoping that way you don't notice they don't have an agenda. They don't have answers.
Former President Obama has been the headlining act at Democratic campaign rallies across the country this final week. But at that one in Las Vegas, the warm-up act was pretty impressive, too. Musical artist John Legend, who not only played for the crowd, but also had this message.
The opportunity and the consequence of these elections is why the Republican Party is afraid to let people vote in free and fair elections. They don't want you to use your voice. They want to put any obstacle in the way of you using your voice. And they want to make sure that if they don't win, they go and tell everybody it was rigged and it wasn't fair. We want the people picking their politicians, not the politicians picking their voters.
And joining me now is John Legend, who, apart from being one of the few people who's won an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Award, has worked relentlessly in his spare time to advocate for equal voting rights across the country. John, it's great to have you on. You've been a bit on the trail, and I understand that you've actually been doing some door knocking. You've been doing some canvassing.
Yes, well, we're actually going to do some canvassing tomorrow morning here in Atlanta. I'm in my hotel room in Atlanta. I spent the afternoon and evening here speaking with folks working on housing policy. But in the morning, we're going to work with the Warnock and Abrams campaigns and try to get folks out to vote here in Georgia.
You know, I always tell people who are interested in politics who have not knocked on doors to go do it, because it's a really remarkable experience, and it can be difficult and weird, but it's incredibly rewarding, I've found. Now, what has your experience been?
I love talking to voters. I love connecting with them. And we have to remember that our democracy is powered by the people. And as long as we stay in touch with the people and hear what their concerns are and what their priorities are, we can have a healthy democracy, have leaders who are responsive to the people. We can do better together. But we've got to get out there and talk to them and hear from them and press the flesh. And I think it's important. And I believe Stacey Abrams and Reverend Warnock believe it's very important as well.
You obviously care deeply about issues of social justice and politics, and I want to talk a little bit about criminal justice reform, which you and I have spoken about before. Mm-hmm. What do you view? What do you view as the stakes here? You talked about, I like that line about people picking their politicians, not politicians picking their voters, which is what happens in some states through gerrymandering, like in Wisconsin. What do you see as the main stakes that have you out on the road talking to people this time?
Well, I think this election is a defining moment for democracy. We see so many election deniers running for state office where they will actually control elections. So you're seeing it with governor elections. You're seeing it with Secretary of State elections. You're seeing it with local election boards. We have so many people who don't even believe in, free and fair elections who are running to administer our elections. And so this is an inflection point for our democracy, because if we allow so many of these people who are anti-democratic, who are fascist, flirting with fascist tendencies to be running our elections, we may not have an actual democracy the next time we have an election.
You have campaigned on and organized around criminal justice reform. I spoke to you a few years ago back in Florida with that remarkable ballot initiative to restore voting rights for people who had felony records. That passed by over 60% needed. It's subsequently been kind of, pared back a bit or made more complicated by Ron DeSantis in the Republican legislature.
Well, DeSantis is a cruel and small individual, and he's found as many cruel ways he can to undermine the progress that the voters Florida overwhelmingly voted for. You see his cruelty when it comes to arresting people who were told that they were allowed to vote. You see his cruelty when it comes to him flying refugees and asylum seekers around the country based on deception and lies. He's a cruel, small person, and you're seeing that in his resistance to the democratic reform that the voters of Florida overwhelmingly voted for.
Yeah, I got to say that we've covered that quite a bit. I mean, the arrests were some of the most shameful stunts that I've seen. I mean, really, truly,
and it frustrates me. And Chris, it frustrates me because it's your job as a journalist to show that, but you're also doing the work of DeSantis, because what he really wants to do is make people afraid to vote. He wants to make people who have felonies on their records, who most of them are eligible to vote, he wants them to be afraid to exercise that right, even if they were told by the local administrator of the election that they were eligible. They're being arrested. And so we're doing whatever we can to help fund the legal defense of folks who are being unjustly charged. And we're fighting for folks. We want people in Florida to make sure they go out and vote, make sure they check their status and do what they need to do.
Yeah, and we should note that one of the first cases has already had the charges dropped of the 20 plus. And talking to legal experts, I suspect that will not be the last of those, because these are pretty paper thin. John Legend, who is in Atlanta and going to hit the doors tomorrow. I think hopefully someone's recording when they open the door and John Legend is there, so we can see that later. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, Chrissy. Hi, Luna. Hi, Miles.